and welcome to a very special series called Building Equitable, Thriving Communities. Our series will explore the ongoing journey in Northeast Wisconsin to co-create equitable community well-being through candid conversations about our collective triumphs, setbacks, and opportunities ahead. My name is Natalie Bomstead, and I'm the Executive Director at Wello, and thank you for joining us. During our last episode, we shared how we collectively came together to provide holistic supports to community members most in need, really highlighting our RISE, which is the Reach Immunization Systems Change for Equity grant-funded initiative. Today, I am happy to be joined once again by two incredible people and partners in this work, Robin Scott of We All Rise and Saeed Hassan from COMSA. Welcome again, Robin and Saeed.
Thank you.
In this episode, we want to take a look toward the future and how, to build an equitable, thriving community, we must really take a systems change approach, or at least a systems approach to this care. And we alluded to it a little bit during our last episode, so we wanted to dive a little bit deeper into that here today. As a disclaimer for our listeners, we will be talking about trauma in this episode. So let's start with some definitions. According to Rockefeller Philanthropy, systems change is a phrase used to explain an approach that targets the root causes of social issues instead of directly tackling the issue itself. Kind of those Band-Aids we were talking about last episode. It aims to alter or shift underlying structures such as policies, mindsets, and power dynamics, which enable the system to function in a particular way. So before we kind of dive in, we wanted to provide, so what's an example of systems change? I wanted to use an analogy. So here's an example. Imagine a river. As you're walking alongside it, you see someone has fallen in and is calling for help. You jump in and you save that person. But once you get to shore, you hear another person calling for help coming down the river. You jump back in and save this new person. However, this keeps happening over and over. So eventually you get out of the river to see what is happening. As you start to head upriver, you're telling people along the way, keep an eye out for people in the river, and the ways in which you have been successful in saving them. So really kind of sharing that knowledge with those other folks. Upriver, you come to a bridge and you see that it has a large hole in it. You put up signs warning people about the dangers ahead. And then you find your community. And together with your community, you identify resources. You identify people's different skill sets and strengths to fix the bridge. You also start providing swimming lessons and training on how to fix bridges in the future. And because the community has worked together on an upstream solution, while also continuing to provide some of those direct services, that education, those different ways in which we can fix problems in the future, more equitable outcomes are achieved. So Robin and Saeed, both of your agencies, as we know, provide essential direct services to people at a time when they are most in need. And each of your organizations also supports those upstream systemic change type activities. So can you describe for our listeners why you believe it's really important to address both the immediate needs of the folks that you serve, as well as continuing to drive that systemic change? So whoever wants to start with that question.
Yeah, actually, again, good day for everyone, good day to the listeners, and thank you for joining us. The opportunity here we were given is to explain what system change means within our population. So talking about the angle of refugees and immigrants. So what does system change means for them? It's very different from other kinds of populations. So for them, it's about a system that integrates them, a system that brings them into the core, a system that doesn't exclude them and lets them live in the periphery. So for us as an organization, the immediate work we do is help those immediate needs. Things like translation work, connecting them to employment, helping them with the school, understand the school system, the health system, and try to also understand the American history. American history, in a sense, some look it into a very glamorous history, but also from the other dark side of the history. What does that mean in their own race when they come in? They prescribe to a race, they prescribe to a community. What does that mean for them in the longer run? And how can they be able to move along the system in order for them to be sustainable? So for us, it is, yes, trying to help them day to day, but also paving the way for a longer term. So that's what we do at COMSA.
Mm-hmm. So I'll be honest, when you first started with walking alongside the river, I was like, okay,
where are you going with this?
But in totality, the vision that I caught, it was everything. All the way from identifying what's happening to going back to your communities and finding your tribe and going back to fix, those bridges. So where do we start? Like, for me, the Band-Aids that we've been talking about, to stop the bleeding effect, right? So people are bleeding, and our job as part of, the nonprofit work that we do is to help to stop and to intervene or to support in some of those initial emergency phases. Because what we know is I can't talk to you. I can't go to a whole therapy session, or I may not be able to, start this degree or this pathway to success if I'm hungry, if I'm cold, and if I don't have what I need in the immediate so that I can show up to those spaces really body ready and mind ready. And so what do we do in the beginning? We provide intervention-based services to be able to help people with those immediate, those basic needs that they have that are not being met. And from there, we listen to folks, and based on their self-reported feedback, as well as the things that we've already gathered, that are necessary to get people to that place of thriving, we have conversation. And we safety plan, and at the same time, we goal and dream set. And so system change, the importance of it for us, like when I'm working with someone and we've done both, we've been able to really meet those immediate needs, and then we've been able to capture what are those dreams and goals. I'll have to be honest, a part of my responsibility while I've, worked on standards of care and standards of practice that will allow for those immediate needs to be met, I do have a responsibility as a leader and as a person that is in community and observing what has happened, and also researched, what has historically happened, to put all those things together to be able to inform the systems that are around us. Because I know that without that, we're gonna still keep doing, go back to the analogy that you shared, we're gonna always be putting Band-Aids on it. And for me, some people, they're just counting the numbers, and we've served 500 people, and I like to think about, like, am I continuing to serve generation after generation with the same thing? If mom is going through the same thing as grandma and the daughter, and then that future daughter is coming in for the same services, what sort of lifelong change are we making? And so that's how I think about, like, the importance behind system change,
Yeah.
It's nothing happy about serving multiple generations with Band-Aids and having to continue to stop the bleeding. It's recognizing that we've broken something somewhere, or something is leaking. And it doesn't just need a, new sheath over it or, a quick plug. Eventually you have to replace the whole thing. And we don't always want to have that conversation.
Yep.
Or, tear it down and rebuild it. So.
Yeah, and I think about this question of like, why? Why? And it's hard sometimes to get to that answer, right? I mean, I think there's some saying around it, maybe asking why 5 times and you get to the root cause. Sometimes you might.
Yeah.
And the answers sometimes are scary. And, thinking about the systems around us that were created and even, growing up in those systems and how sometimes it's hard even to recognize what they are, but you can feel them. And so, understanding and, trying to find the way in, right? Can you create change within, or do you create change outside and then inform in, right? And I think that that's the challenge that many nonprofits and people within the community who are really committed to social change work and systems change type work, is like you try to work with the systems, and sometimes you say, these systems simply aren't working. And I think one of the things, we've talked in this series around different ways in which, our community agencies and others across our community have really come together and done something different, right? And I think part of systems change is then elevating that result, right? Look, when something is done differently, we're often scared about change or the uncertainty of those things, but can we hold some of these examples up for others who might be hesitant to jump in to show what's possible? Even if it's, small, you need those small things to start lead to bigger things around systems change.
Yeah, absolutely. Change is painful. We always talk about change as something that is not going to come by very easily. It requires commitment. It requires intentional bravery for individuals to face change. So I think with system change, when we talk about system change, which at times is a buzzword, is who is the architect, who are the constructors of the system in order for us to disrupt this system. So oftentimes it's them versus us, but who are they? Who are they? Who are these systems?
Very few.
Articles.
Very few.
So I think unless otherwise we talk to, we are frank about change itself, and we're trying to, those behind the system group are very intentional about change. I think nothing is going to happen. I think to my honest self. Yeah.
I'm happy you brought that up because so I try to encourage people, change is not something that has to scare you. It's not something that scares me. I, grew up with young parents and, have younger siblings. I'm the oldest of 7. And so, and we lived in homelessness and, experienced the harder side of things and then also the comfortable side of things. And so, I'm accustomed to change. And I try to embed that very early in the minds of young people. It's who told us that change was scary, and that who said that these conversations that we're having are courageous? Has there ever been a time where people just told the truth? You know what I mean? And so is it really, what they say it is, or is it just, truth telling? And yeah, being in the moment, talking about actualities instead of euphemisms, and using things that further allow people to feel detached. I try to remind folks, there's different levels of change, right? There's the individual levels, and we can talk about how we're impacted, when that first person jumped in, and then there's that community and societal and historical levels of change.
Yep.
But who told us that change was scary, right? And so that's why I said, as you were talking, it made me think about the very few. Yep. And I try to remind everyday folks that are here, stop letting that very few tell us all what to do, because that's exactly what is happening, right? The very few telling us all what to do, because then their dollars will continue to roll in, and we'll continue to be having, some of the same conversations and solving some of the same issues that we already have the answers. It's just about putting those puzzle pieces together, and it's just about, aligning that with decision makers, so don't let me get started.
Change is ever constant, right? It's one of the few things that we know for certainty will continue to happen,
Yes.
right? I love
Time ain't
that.
stopping for nobody.
Let's embrace it.
Yes.
Let's look at it in the face and welcome it in ways. So this Stanford Social Innovation Review, or SSIR, they recently published an article, and it was entitled Healing Systems. And so they argue that trauma is a near universal part of the human experience and an invisible force that contributes to the stuckness of virtually all of our social systems. And the authors, they dive further into how trauma can inhibit our ability for systems change. And for our listeners, we will put the link to this article with this episode. And so as they continue to dive into this article, one of the things they start to deconstruct is, what is trauma? If we all experience it in different ways, according to the article, trauma is an invisible, unhealed wound caused by an overwhelming event, series of events, or enduring conditions that remains active in our bodies, in our psyches, and our ways of relating to others. And during a traumatic incident, part of the brain called the amygdala takes over. It produces that involuntary reactive response. And these incidents then get fragmented off from our conscious awareness and unintegrated but out of the way so that we can kind of continue to function, right? It's really a shield for our bodies, right? When we are experiencing that, we've often talked about, you've heard about fight or flight, like what our body as humans are programmed to keep us safe, right? So in other words, when we experience trauma, our bodies immediately try to protect us, which can result in us pushing down those feelings and other emotions that impact, and the emotional impacts of the trauma itself, which can accumulate and build over time. So this idea around healing systems, right, and ensuring that we can think about at a community level, how do you do that, right? How can we leave room, right? And not only leave room, but make room and create the spaces to really recognize that and move forward. And this article, it really reinforces the notion that we really can't skip steps on the repair, or we can't skip steps to achieve our shared vision around building equitable and thriving communities. And that systems change work must include not just opportunities for the individuals, but also how we're doing that collectively. So each of your agencies, I know, do an incredible job of creating multiple levels of support for folks, and advocacy, which is crucial to your efforts. And these efforts are really healing-centric, at least from my perspective. I feel like you both really lead with a healing-centric model. So in what ways do you think healing plays a role beyond that in the systems change work? Or do you? I mean, maybe that's the question. Does it play a role? Does this article resonate with what you have all seen in your line of work? And I'll let either of you speak to that.
I can start us off. Yeah, so the body keeps score is one thing that came to mind as you were talking about it, the ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, the way that our brains protect itself, you talked about that beautifully. And our brains are this beautiful mechanism and system that once you have experienced those traumas, almost cut off and erase some of those memories, so that you're not constantly reliving it, and then that you're able to move on. And so what that tells me is just at our core, and with all of our different varieties of people, like we all experience things differently, right? And there are folks that have privilege, there are folks that grow up in tougher neighborhoods. And who's to say what event that a person went through and how it impacted their brain and how they felt about it, how that rocked, their world. And so I think the focus ought to be on, that there are so many things that make us similar than the things that make us really different. And so if people just really understood that at the core, we can hold the right people accountable in terms of like that healing and systems change, right? So there was a time, if you guys are okay with a quick story, that I was sitting in a room and there was, like 150 Black women in that circle. And there was this amazing facilitator group that was, the conversation and the topic was about gender violence. And so as we have this shared topic today, I just wanted to just say that like a lot of mine is about, doing healing work is, gender violence and anti-violence work as well. And we're in a room and there's, 150 women in a circle. And the facilitator asked how many folks that were in the circle had been a victim or a witness in their lifetime to sexual assault. And out of the 150 people, there were maybe 10 hands down. Wow. Right? And these were people from all over. They weren't from a particular subset of Wisconsin, just all over the state that have come from many different areas. There were maybe 10 people that were down. And so what we know, and not to take anything even away from the person that experienced the trauma firsthand, but even if you watch another person experience trauma, we know that that affects us in very unique ways, right? It could rock a person. And saying that to say, now, out of that whole group of people that had raised their hand in our continued conversation, fast forward to maybe just a couple weeks ago. And I had one survivor, friend, leader, powerful woman in community that was speaking at a local committee, government committee, and advocating for trafficking, victimization, and trafficking survivors and sexual assault survivors. And in that conversation, she was talking to people that subsequently did not understand because they had not experienced, right? What I would say in that scenario is one, we have to look at the people that are in charge of making the policies and the practices that will ultimately affect our bodies and our lives. And then two, at the human and at the individualized level, we ought to recognize that we have a responsibility to the rest of the people that are around us to acknowledge that even if we have not experienced those things, that doesn't mean that they don't exist. That doesn't mean that it's not happening. And it also doesn't mean that your own grandchildren or children won't experience the traumas and the realities that people right in front of you are experiencing. So we can say all day, what this utopian world should look like or what we're building, but at the individual level, person by person, if we cannot recognize that we are only as great as the person that is struggling the most in our communities, where are we gonna get, So.
Absolutely. So in our case, we came from a very traumatic background. We lost a lot in our lives as a refugee and somebody who came through multiple countries. So when you see a refugee or immigrant, you know, the stories they have is by itself very traumatic. So a few years ago when the Afghan, you know, when Afghanistan was overthrown, you know, by Taliban, and Taliban took over, and then the first group came to Fort McCoy, and they were resettled in Brown County. One Sunday afternoon, I received a call from this gentleman talking about, he called the police with a translator and asked the police to take him back to Afghanistan. So his daughter had a kidney pain, and he never had groceries, and he wanted the police to take him back to Afghanistan. So what the police did was they gave my number to him, and he called me speaking Pashtun, and then I asked him, I just said wait, but the way I did was I Googled what does wait means in Pashtun, but Pashtun is written like Arabic from right to left. So I pronounced it maybe a weird way, but the good thing is he understood what I was saying. And then I called my friend who speaks the language and did three-way conversation. And he explained that his daughter is having a kidney pain, and he took his daughter to NAW clinic the previous day, Friday, and she is in pain, and they don't have groceries. So that story tells you that, and even though I don't speak his language, the hope is that the police give that number to him with the hopes that I will help the person. So oftentimes we embody as an organization a hope for those who fled their countries, a hope to an extent they will be okay in where they are. So I went to his house with a translator. My son was with me. We purchased the food for him, the medicine for his daughter, and then we had a green tea together. And I told him that his and his kids will be okay. Those are the stories we get every day. And what does that story mean for me as a young man who fled his country 30 years ago? It awakens my curiosity of remembering the day that bullets went out in my school. It brings me to tears. I see the kids that my child was playing as innocent as I was when the bullet went off. So that is the organization we have. The bad news, though, is we don't have culturally responsive trauma informed in our area. We do the trauma, but I'm not trained. So, however, the organization we have, we decided as a group, board included, intentionally to bring those cultures together. We have Afghan, we have Ukrainian, and the Ukrainians are the same thing. The very recent attacks in the
This episode is gonna make me emotional.
was that the children, the Ukrainian kids, and they are in our after-school program. But when they came to Brown County, that when the plane is moving up over the roof, and they were ducking under their desks because that's the situation they came from. Boys are angry because their fathers are fighting back and their mothers are here. How can we include them into the schools? How can we tell them, hey, come? So we have to bring all the Ukrainian artifacts, the colors, the flags, the history, to make that we are with you. Eat the foods with them, sit with them, make sure, as Robin said, heal them in a way that is more meaningful. So that's the trauma we see in our organization.
In our schools, trauma-informed care, do you see that?
I was not expecting that when we were laughing in the beginning. And you said you had a disclaimer, huh?
Yeah.
When he said bullets flying past my head, I was like, All right, viewers, I can't barely see. Okay.
You think about those children coming into our school systems. I know trauma-informed care has been, again, something that has been talked about a lot. Are we seeing that within the school systems? Thinking about how can we, as a community, come together and do better? What are some of those? Are those some trainings that we can continue to do?
Yeah, I think the first thing that we need to do that we are not doing very good is cultural integration training for refugees. When our immigrants, when they come here, oftentimes what the American system, the immigration system is designed in a way that is more, from, like self-sufficiency, put them to work, put them to this. But within these 90 days, they are in between understanding how to grocery, where are the groceries, where is the school. They don't have that concept of how the system works. So the culture shock combined with the trauma they had creates an environment that requires actually more education. I'm meeting with the state refugee barrier today to discuss about this. This is a need in our community that has not been resolved. And this is something beyond our organization. And I just want to be frank with you guys. If anything that is going to make me overwhelmed, frustrated, and even make me hate the kind of work I do, because I want to be there for this group, is this unavailability of these resources to the refugees and immigrants when they come into the area. And we assume that they are here, now therefore they can shoot into the system and work and provide for their families and become assimilated as quick as possible within 90 days. That is not possible. So that is actually what makes me awake every day. That's what frustrated me as a leader in this organization. And if I leave this organization out of frustration, that is one reason that maybe is going to make me force my idea to resign and leave this work, because that is a work that I really want to see that these families are taken care of. In the last...
You're burning out.
Yes, correct. I'm burning out my caseworkers, I'm burning out myself, I'm burning out everybody. I'm putting more work to even some of our board members are working with me, emailing them, this is a family in need, how can I do?
Yeah.
So within 90 days, the resettling agencies do not have responsibility. Where do they find themselves in? In COMSA. Do we have the resources for them? No. What can I do? I have to think in a way that we can make them, navigate resources in order for them to resettle. So that's the challenges that we have as an organization, combating this trauma, trauma part within the refugees and immigrants.
Hard to keep working hard with a broken heart.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you're talking about some of the real challenges with system change work is that these systems are often long-standing. They're often really ingrained in power structures as well. And they're not easily changed. And so I think, to your point, how can we also support the people doing this important work, right? Because we don't want you to burn out. How can we provide community support and just individual support to one another? And I think in some ways, the nonprofit community tries to band together in that way. But we need more. We need more. I think about
Realize that people don't get cookies for ending racism. You
right.
know?
This isn't a cookie cutter situation, right? Right. Exactly. I think about some of our other systems we've talked about, and just each of us, right? We're talking about how each of us carries certain types of trauma that have happened in our lives, and I often think about, for me personally, I think about when we were trying to start a family. And we had a miscarriage, I ended up in the hospital, not great situation. Went on to have 2 beautiful, healthy children.
Thank God.
But I remember being pregnant after losing a child and never feeling like I could fully embrace being pregnant and being excited. And then you think about the systems around you, right? And you're going in for your checks. And I had the great privilege of having great health care.
Yeah.
But you go in and they say, so this is your first child. How excited are you? And I know in my heart that they're trying to celebrate with me.
Yeah.
But all I can think about is,
Hurry up, check the heartbeat.
is the heartbeat there?
Yeah.
Is this baby going to actually survive, right? Am I going to have this baby? And then you're, even in labor, they're like, all right, and all you can think about, right, are the things that could go wrong. And trying to embrace, I had a great support network around me of like the baby shower and all those things. And then at the back of your mind, right, you have those thoughts, right? And so we think about those systems, and then, like from a healthcare system, how are we training those folks to be healing-centric in situations like birth, right? I often thought, didn't you read my chart?
Yeah.
Because it also made you not feel seen,
Absolutely.
right? No, this isn't my first, but now I'm going to pretend that this is.
Because I don't want to go there.
Because I don't want to go there with you, because I'm already full of hormones and emotions, right? Right? So just thinking about just the different ways. And so when we think about, so obstetrics and the care that you would receive there are whole systems around that. So it's interesting, I think, we each probably have these stories of these different traumas within our life. And I think, I'm just kind of a why person, right? I'm always like, well, I feel like we could how could we strengthen that? How could we make that better for the next person? And so I think this work can be very heavy. I think that's probably an understatement. It can be very heavy, and it also feels like just called to do it and to show up for each other and for like humankind in ways that, well, if we can influence at least one system for the better, and we can help that one family that might break that system of trauma for that one group, it feels worth it. And it's hard work. And I would love to see more philanthropic investment in the folks on the ground doing it. Last episode we talked about trust-based philanthropy. I don't know how to do systems change type work without a model like that really invests in people, right? Often you hear it, called overhead, right? Well, it's the people doing the work, right? And shouldering those things moving forward and continuing to catalyze those things forward and doing it in a way that is intentional. It's healing-centric, it's human-centric. So I think, do you see things that are going well for us? So we'll kind of shift gears a little bit. As a community, have you seen examples where there has been some systems change work and you feel like things are moving in a better direction?
I'll be honest, we've been socially engineered to have fear. We've been socially engineered to keep going, get things done, produce a product. And so even in the situations like what you're talking about, why did we not want to go there? Well, we didn't want to go there because the mistake already happened, right? If you read the chart, and if you did things carefully, you wouldn't have asked the question to begin with, right? But very early on, we're taught, as young people, not to challenge, if that's gonna hurt somebody's feelings, not to bring it up, or that you're confrontational when in fact you're like, because this question, why, like maybe in this setting it's a safe question,
right?
But you ask it in certain classrooms, and is it?
Right.
You know what I mean?
And also feeling like when you're experiencing the trauma, at least just in my specific case, it was going to be more traumatic to have that
absolutely
conversation. So, but I feel like people don't always understand that. Like you talked about, I'm tired of having courageous conversations.
Yeah.
Right? Keep going.
Yeah, but we don't have to have that if we recognize that the system is broken. We've been taught to do things this way, and we know the other ways to do it, right? The problem is we're okay with saying this is gonna take 100 years. This won't happen in my generation. This, like, it does not have to happen like that. We see that with certain funding saying, like, you know what, we're cutting this because you all are doing it in a way that is not working, right? You know, it's out there, it's been put out there that this is not the future, this is not sustainable, but we're cutting, right?
Yep.
And then not only are we just cutting and we're just leaving people open, but we've told you for almost 100 years that this was not the future, and you've continued to do it that way, and you've continued to, you know, really centralize power here and not decentralize it by going out into your community and being very much so entrenched in what's happening there. So back to what, you know, like what you talked about, like your reality. If we taught folks to slow down and be, you know, very, very person-centered, you know, we wouldn't even ask questions like that to begin with, you know?
Right.
And if we were gonna have those conversations, we would make sure that, like, before we ask a question or through that statement out there, like, this is your first child, right? Like this world of like these quick things that we just say and then we don't even think about it.
Right. When are you gonna have kids? You don't have kids yet? Right? There's all these little subtle things that you're like,
that are so hard. Oh, I can't have kids, you know?
Yeah, right.
And then I have to say that just like out in the open, and it's just so, it's so damning.
Yeah.
You know? And so like, or even when we do make mistakes, right? We have this society of cancellation. Like you don't get to make a mistake and come back from it, right? That's not a normal part of human behavior. Like people make mistakes. Now, there's a difference with like, so we talked about intention and impact on another episode. Okay, that wasn't your intention, but now that you recognize your impact, how are you gonna do it differently, you know? And what is a real apology like? Like these are the things that like when we think about like schooling and life skills and all of those things that we should be teaching people, you know? I had, what do you call it, a debate, you know? I call it talking to people and telling the truth. But I think for them it was a debate because, you know, arms started to get crossed and, you know, eyes started to look up at ceilings and stuff. But it was literally about, where was I even? Look, I started thinking about 10 things about like that I've had a debate about. I got a big mouth. Look, where was I going with that? Okay, we'll have to skip past that one because I literally just forgot.
Well, I think one of the things you said around systems are created by people. So people can also change the systems.
Yeah.
Right? And I love that piece of why do we think it's gonna, because that is a prevailing narrative and systems change too. It's gonna take a long time to change.
No, Purveyor came out till we all rise in 1 week. You know what I mean? Like the hospital came out and gave us shots on, you know? But it was, the reality was, I was afraid to ask the question. It didn't even seem like a normal question.
Right, exactly.
Like, do we have to go to the hospital or can the hospital come here, you know? And it wasn't, you know, that fear was ingrained. Where did I learn that? Very early on.
Right.
You know?
Instead of finding a way to yes.
Absolutely.
Right, or yes and.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, for us, I think it was more feasibility. In the beginning, a lot of people did not know about COMSA. So that by itself, I think with rebranding, people could recognize who we are. Are we getting roses? No, all the time. Because during this time, we got very disturbing messages sometimes in our inboxes. So the system changed itself, and then the trauma people have, and you know, how are we? Is there any good things that's happening within this rebranding of our organization? Recognizing of who we are, yes, I think there is to an extent. We're gaining a lot of momentum and very, and I said in the first episode that there's a lot of people, but there's few human beings. During the time of Afghan and even during the recent episode of the Ukrainians, we received a lot of outpouring support, people who wanted to give hugs, people who wanted to allow, you know, spaces for them. Like one lady told me that she has 2 bedrooms she's living in, and she want to leave. You want to give it to someone who will use it for 6 months. She want to stay with her daughter. So this kind of support gives us the charge to say, there's a lot of people out here who are very supportive. So oftentimes when you see all the negativity in the media about refugees and immigrants, what's happening in Hamas, in Gaza right now, that Hamas did something very bad that was very, very gross to the lives of Israelis, and now Israel came and created that havoc. Over 30,000 kids were killed. So coming from a refugee background, coming from a civil war, when you hear that, when you see those images and you see these messages, it also again, awakens your curiosity of the mass trauma. So coming back to the good, the good Samaritans and people who are trying to uplift and support, of course, yes. Is it proportionate to the needs of the community? Not yet there. Yeah.
So how can we do better? So we'll kind of end on this note of we've taken these 3 episodes to start, and we've really tried to set the stage, I hope, for listeners to understand or maybe more want to know more, right, about equity versus equality. We've talked about thriving. We've talked about systems change and trust-based philanthropy, and we've given some examples of how right here in Northeast Wisconsin we've come together to do these things. What would you want to leave these listeners with in terms of what does the future look like? How do we move forward? How do we think about all of these things together in a way that really builds a flourishing and prosperous community?
So for me, I'll start is, come and join us, come and see the journey. We have started the journey, but it also requires the village to get to the upstream that you were talking about in the beginning. I think for us to get there, we need to gain more friends. We need to invite people to come and see what we do, come and support us. We need people to witness the challenges that these people are facing, and then also the local leaders, for example. We don't want to see them in the ballots when they want just soliciting votes from us. We want them to come and see down to the grassroots level and see the challenges we are facing as an organization, as a community. What is the representation looks like. We also want to see a change within locality, a change that comes, a change has to come within. So we have to, first of all, try to, three of us, like Casa Alba, Wello, Casa Alba, We All Rise at COMSA, have been very much, in the forefront in helping the community advocate for their rights. We want to see kids who are not being bullied, who are not being discriminated because of the hijab. We want to see, Green Bay that, because you're hijabi and it's election time, that you don't fear. So this is the future we want to see. And how can we get there? I think it's not going to be one or also 3 of us. It's going to be all of us in Green Bay, and from the leadership to the ordinary person that is going to come together and make sure that this is going to become a city that belongs to all who live in it.
Yeah, thank you. There's a quote that is like, we have nothing to lose but our chains. That is for Black, brown, and allies alike. We have nothing to lose but our chains. And so what do we need to remember is that love always wins, and love is solidarity. Solidarity is love, and standing alongside people, and just going back to that social engineering, we have been conditioned to feel like that is their problem, very much so compartmentalize and individualize or point the finger. And so what is the future? It's to recognize the bystander effect. Understand that it doesn't that person will do it or that person will do it. And that's what continues to give way to what we see our communities going through right now. So what do I want to say to the viewers? Get away from the bystander effect. Be intentional about undoing that bystander effect and recognize that it's literally you. It is you on your block, in your neighborhood, that is going to keep the kids safe. It's really you that's going to feed the kids. It's really not Greta or not, this, other person or somebody that you heard is doing it at a local church or something. It's really you. You're the ones that you're on the porch. You're walking your dog in the neighborhoods. You're, at the school board meetings. You're, in this community. And, why not you? So it's just remembering that love always wins, and like love is like a noun, it's a person, place, thing, it's an action, verb, like it's all of those things. And so while love can be a institution, it can be brick and mortar and a center, it also is about your action. So be determined, be consistent, and not just be like, during the Black Lives Matter movement, oh my God, those poor Black people, let us help right now, and then never give to a Black organization or be intentional about, supporting with time or treasure ever again. It's like, stop being what we've been conditioned to be, and that's just momentary, impulsive, a very short attention span. Folks, that is not who we are at our core. That is not what humans were designed to be. We're so multidimensional, and we just have such incredible abilities. And if we think about ourselves physiologically, we have been created, to be able to do things unlike, we got things flying around us and flying through the streets, And so just these amazing people capable of doing amazing things, get away from that bystander effect. That is what people want. And get out in your community and recognize that, like, not everybody's the leader, but there are some people that are integral parts of the system as a whole. Stop waiting for somebody else to do it. You see the problem, go to the people that are impacted, or go to the people that know, stand alongside those people and move forward together. That's how we do it.
Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Okay.
I don't know that I want to end on anything but that. Love,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If not you, then who, right?
If not you, then who? Yeah.
Right? And I think, each of us, we've talked throughout these episodes about each recognizing, I think, where you are right now on your journey, being committed to learning more, committed to continue to do, right? And to recognize the different strengths we can all bring to this. It's like a quilt, right? That even if it might not be affecting you, it is.
Facts.
It is.
Absolutely.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think it, to really try to do some of the deep work, to understand that, to ask those whys, and to understand how together we can be strong, stronger together. And we hold the power.
Absolutely.
We hold the power to create that transformational change.
And one thing I think that is also an obstacle to change is the different generations seeing change from different angles. So they want to see a change in the way they view change. The group under them also sees change differently.
Yes.
And the group underneath them also sees change differently. So how can we reconcile these three wants to make sure that it is just one want or one picture that's all called change for all? So I think that's what actually brought us the word United Front for Social Change. Regardless of our color, our beliefs, our differences, our languages, the way we sleep, the way we walk, this is just intentional, common, breaking that barrier of, the silos, putting out of ourselves, out of the silos, and working together to break that system through and bring about change. But where does it start from? Is what you said. It starts from the person who's watching us today.
Facts.
So whether you are in Northeast Wisconsin or you're beyond, we invite you to join us in building an equitable, thriving community where you find yourself, right? Where you call home. And this centering piece around love, right? This is love, is this common language. All we have to be willing to do is to do it. And it seems simple to say, it's harder to do. But we invite you to do the things that you can today to build an equitable, thriving community where you are. So on behalf of myself, Robin, Saeed, we want to thank you for your vulnerability. We want to thank you for your candor, for your truth. I think we're all better from hearing your perspectives and for the leadership that you bring to our community and to beyond. So thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Until next time, this was another edition of Building Equitable, Thriving Communities. Take care.